All right, so a lot happened in the Eastern Conference this offseason. We just saw the Knicks, who were the second seed in the East last season, bolster their roster by bringing in the signature 3-and-D player in Mikal Bridges to pair alongside with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. We saw Paul George head from the Western Conference over to the East to pair alongside with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and the Philadelphia 76ers. My question becomes this: where do the Miami Heat fit into the conversation of Eastern Conference contenders? So when we kind of talk about that list of East contenders, there's obviously going to be the Celtics, as they just won the NBA Finals. There's going to be the New York Knicks. As I said, I love the move of bringing in Bridges, and I think he puts them there as a legitimate contender. You'd have to say the Sixers because they have Paul George and Embiid and Maxey. That is definitely a championship level trio if everything goes well, especially from a health standpoint. There are also the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think Milwaukee is going to be this mid in back-to-back seasons. So that generally, I feel like, is the list that people come up with or would come up with when talking about Eastern Conference contenders. And I think a lot of people are going to forget about the Heat. And the weird thing about it is that's been the way the last couple of seasons. When we talk about the Eastern Conference contenders, the Miami Heat are generally left out of that conversation. So good example. During the regular season in that 2022-23 season, the Heat were not at all in too many championship contention conversations. Yet they ended up winning the Eastern Conference Finals and making the NBA Finals. So there's a trend with the Heat where, as I said, people tend to forget about them. Maybe in the regular season, they're in the middle of the pack. Yes, there have been seasons where they're near the top of the Eastern Conference, but there have also been years where they're kind of middle of the pack, a little underwhelming, and they still find a way to break through. As I said, best example of that is 2023. How many times is that going to happen with the Heat till we realize that they are just simply a team that we cannot make predictions about during the regular season because they always figure things out come postseason time? I think that things would have looked completely different in that first round if Jimmy Butler was healthy in that series. So that's kind of the thing with the Heat, is they always tend to sneak up on us. Why put ourselves through that hassle of forgetting about them, knowing that trend over the last couple of seasons? Over the last 4 seasons, the Heat have made the NBA Finals twice. So them and the Celtics have been the most consistently dominant teams in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs over that 4-year span. And in my opinion, this coming season, what they have on paper, to me, it's their best roster of that entire Jimmy Butler era. That's just my opinion. If you look at the Heat, generally they're known as a great defensive team, and sometimes they run into like these offensive issues. You may feel like there are times where there aren't enough shot creators around Jimmy Butler. I know that was kind of an issue for them in 2023. They struggled a little bit in that final series against the Nuggets when it came to finding consistent offense and shot creating around Butler. But look at this team on paper this particular season. Yes, they're still going to be great from a defensive standpoint, but offensively, these are some of the best options that Jimmy Butler has had around him since being here in Miami. For one, there's obviously him. There's also Terry Rozier, another guy who missed that first round against the Celtics. He is a very experienced, seasoned veteran. Last time we saw him in the playoffs with the Celtics was a long time ago, right, a few years ago, but he was still generally a great performer for them on that stage and on that level. There is obviously the all-star and one of the best big men in the NBA, Bam Adebayo. There's also Tyler Herro, who was just ready to pop off and emerge as an all-star for the first time in his career. I feel like with Herro, he's like ready to become that all-star for the first time. Like, I feel like he's just on the verge of it. He's waiting to get there, hasn't gotten there just yet. It could happen at any given time with him. And there's also guys like Alec Burks, who they brought over from New York, who was an amazing instant add water offense type of guy that New York brought off the bench. And he gave them a lot on that end of the court during that series, especially against the Indiana Pacers when there were situations where Jalen Brunson was being slowed down just a bit. There is still Duncan Robinson here, right? There's still Kevin Love here. He's back for yet another season. They also got Khalil Ware from Indiana, who was a very highly touted player out of this draft class. And my apologies if I missed anybody, but looking at that, that is a great line of offensive talent for this Miami Heat team. I really don't doubt they're going to have a lot of issues this coming season and during the playoffs this coming season with shot creating around Jimmy Butler. And also, if you look at them, they've not been known to do well when they've been without. So if you go and look at them back in 2023, they made that finals appearance without Tyler Herro. Tyler Herro is like an 18-point per game to 20-point per game scorer. They made that finals run without one of their best shot creators. Think about that. And think about what they have now. This team has found ways to stay competitive and win even when they are without key guys. Go back and look at the 2020 finals when Goran Dragic was out for a pretty significant part of that final series against the LA Lakers. Yes, they lost, but they still remained competitive and etched out a few games because of their grit, their toughness, and also because Jimmy Butler is that great as a player. But this Heat team has figured out ways to win without. And the last 2 seasons, we have seen them without. Like I said, in 2023, they were without one of their best shot creators in Tyler Herro. And just last postseason, they were without Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier. Teams in the Eastern Conference still have every single reason to be worried about this Heat team come playoff time. It'll be different. Like, talking about this team would be different if it was a situation where we saw them healthy, they had no excuses, and they kept falling short. That's not the case with the Heat. We have seen them make do without significant parts of their roster. So like I said, 2023, Herro being out for that entire postseason. I think he played like 1 or 2 games in that first round against the Bucks back in 2023. But significantly, he missed that entire postseason for the Heat, and they were kind of left there with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, 2 really good offensive options, obviously 2 all-star caliber players, but without having your third best shot creator, that is a big chunk you're missing. And like I said, just last postseason, missing Butler and Rozier in that first round and losing to a really good Boston Celtics team who at that point, in my opinion, was the most dominant team in the NBA. They are back and healthy. They have a really good revitalized roster with a couple of extra additions and pieces. Teams in the East, as I said, should be really, really worried about this team. They have shot creating, they have defense, they have the coaching, they have the culture, and also they have the experience. Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, if that is your big 3, if that is your core, those guys have finals experience. Bam Adebayo, 2 NBA finals. Jimmy Butler, 2 NBA finals. Tyler Herro playing in just 1 NBA final series. He did get there with the Heat in 23, but he didn't play. But that is a lot of experience. They check every single box you'd want to check for a championship contending squad. What box is there that Miami Heat don't have checked? I can't think of one. They have every single thing checked. For them, it is simply going to come down to health. But from a basketball standpoint, as far as fit, roster pieces, and all of those things, they are ready to make significant noise in the East, right? And there's also this point. Erik Spoelstra needs a lot of credit. Like, how he's been able to manage this Heat team and also give credit to the front office for being able to help build this culture and build up this roster. But LeBron left the Miami Heat, right? And they were kind of left to kind of deal with things. He generally kept this team afloat for a very long time. They followed up the LeBron James era. LeBron is one of the greatest players, if not the best player of all time. They followed that era up with yet another era of championship contention. After losing LeBron James, they managed to make 2 NBA Final Series since then, and possibly a few others if injuries didn't hit them. Think about that. Let's go think about the narrative about LeBron that people always come up with. He carries all these teams, and if he wasn't there, they wouldn't be able to make do. This is one team you cannot say that about with LeBron, right? You can't say that the Heat as a franchise struggled with LeBron leaving. Generally, when like these dominant players leave these franchises, they're left scrambling and trying to figure everything out. Not the case at all with the Heat. And that's not a diss on LeBron. That's not taking away his importance. Instead, that's actually talking about how strong that Heat culture is and how great of a coach Erik Spoelstra is. I still think he is the best coach in the NBA. He is so good with working with what he has. So there's that point I wanted to make about Spoelstra. I think the Heat are right back in the mix as a contender. The Eastern Conference should definitely be concerned about them. As I said, it's going to come down to health and availability. But even so, if they end up missing one piece, if they still have 3 key guys like Herro, Butler, and Bam, and maybe Rozier is hurt, or like another situation, they got Rozier, Butler, and Bam, and maybe Herro is hurt, they've been good enough over the last couple of seasons to convince us that they can still figure out ways to compete and win big-time playoff series with one of their key guys being out. Just keep an eye on this Heat team. They're going to be dangerous. They are not out of the mix at all in the Eastern Conference, despite all of the big moves we've seen some other teams in the Eastern Conference make throughout this offseason.